Hello.
Hello, Christine. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I am well. Okay. Well, we're here. So, how are you? What news? I don't even know where to begin. We've got the Pope's death. Obviously, that's a thing. It's going to certainly have some impact on the world, but not much here in the United States. We've got Pete Hegseth, a.k.a. Major Shitfingers, who never washes his hands. It looks like they're looking for a replacement for him. What else? What's on your mind?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we also had today four Congress people going to El Salvador to try to get proof of life for Kilmar Abrego Garcia,
Yeah.
as well as Andre Hernandez and the other Venezuelan migrants who were deported to CCOT. Bukele, in his normal ghoulish fashion, had to add his own distraction to the mix and suggest to Maduro that they do a prisoner swap with Venezuela. But Maduro told him to kick rocks, essentially. So, we're not over here defending Venezuela by any means. But, glad at least they didn't agree to that, because that would have created even more of an international incident than what is already brewing. So here we are.
The thing that strikes me about that is you get these dictators, and they don't come to office to do any good for their country. They don't come to office to try to move anything forward or make anything better. They come to office because it's a grift. They make money. Hitler made money by getting into politics. He made himself a millionaire, multimillionaire, by getting into politics. And everybody that he dragged along with him, he made rich as well by giving them these juicy contracts. Putin, everybody that came along with him, they're multi-billionaires now. And of course, Putin may be, nobody really knows, the richest man in the world. If not, he's certainly in the top 10 probably. Bukele, yeah. He's making his way. He wants to do something. He wants to make some hay on the back of this drug deal, almost literally, that he cut with Trump. By the way, I love the fact that we've got people out there saying, oh my gosh, we deported all these people and now we're no longer supporting them. Well, yeah, but we're paying $20 million a year to Bukele to take care of them in our name, which is thoroughly disgusting. So, hello, Doc. How you doing?
Well, it's been a long day. I've been up since 4. Oh, hold on a second. Don't want to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say hello to everybody. I'm going to go get my headphones so I don't get the reverberation. So I'll be back in about 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, hello, goodbye. We'll see you in a bit.
Hello and goodbye.
So anyway, so it's all a grift, isn't it?
It is all a grift. And it's, Bukele he's an interesting character. And I've kind of been trying to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with him. And it's not that easy to find a lot of stuff about this guy's early life. But one thing I did find out, and this is from Mother Jones, I'm just scratching the surface of it, But it seems that a lot of the progress that he's made in El Salvador is due to deals that he made directly with MS-13. So
that's not surprising at all.
Yeah. And, it's which raises a lot of questions now as well about why is Pam Bondi just, they decided to drop the charges against that MS-13 leader, and instead they're just going to deport him back to El Salvador. I don't know. That's kind of convenient. So there's lots of deals going on.
It almost always is a grift. The only dictator that I can think of, and maybe there's another one, that got in it because he was a true believer in the cause and still made a pot of money, but did what he wanted to do ideologically, was Francisco Franco of Spain. And he was not a good guy. I'm not trying to defend him in any way, but at least he truly believed. I mean, this is an ultra Catholic who really created a Christo-fascist state that didn't seem to have a lot to do with all the trappings and money and lifestyle of the rich and famous. I could be wrong, and if somebody else knows something out there about Franco in specific that I don't, but if he's the only one, or if he's one of only two or three in world history that did that, that kind of tells you a little bit something about the type of people that want to do these things, and why in the hell would we want to elect them into office? Welcome back, Doc.
Hey, back again. So, I, if you don't mind, I'm going to tangent off of Francisco Franco into something that Harry and I have discussed before about how do you get rid of dictators and autocrats. And when you look at Franco, once he got in, he stayed there for a long time. So this doesn't mean that we can just turn this around at a moment's notice. Even if we do have elections in 26 and take them over. So, that's the worrisome part about all this that's going on. Now, to me, the good news is we did not have martial law declared yesterday. I was scared to death that was going to happen. And I think I have the reason for that, because I think that he was talked out of it, frankly, because the political downside to him doing that would be catastrophic. Now, I mean, we look at it, of course, it's going to be catastrophic because we're all going to be affected. But when you parse through, how do you overthrow autocrats? You can do it violently or non-violently. And when you look at the statistics, non-violent means of trying to overthrow autocracy or dictators are twice as likely to succeed as violent methods. And the violent methods are also much more likely to provoke a violent response that gets all the leaders killed and a lot of other people along with it. I mean, this should be right up your territory, Harry.
So so over the weekend, I can't remember what day it was. It might have been Friday. A blurb that probably very few people noticed was that neither DHS nor DOD recommended that he go to martial law. Remember, he had asked them for a recommendation and their thoughts, and they both came back saying negative. So what that means to me is that you're right. They made a calculation that he didn't have the strength yet to be able to do, and whether that's strength within the cabinet, whether that's strength on Congress, whether that's strength with the population. I mean, his approval ratings are lower than they've ever been. His disapproval ratings are higher than they've ever been. And he's actually got people in Congress that are now starting to talk against him.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that gives me hope right now is, it's like seeing Murkowski finally, lack of a better words, grow a pair of balls after, saying we're all scared up here. And it's like, I hope Louis gets in, because what he told us, at Thursday and Friday, I still can't stop thinking about it.
Well, that's exactly when I saw our good Alaskan senators' comments about that. That's the first thing I reflected on was Louis' observations to us privately And by the way, I don't want to spill the beans too much on him, but that tracks along with what I saw a couple of weeks ago. From you've got a tail flopping off of your off of your right shoulder there. Anyway, sorry, it was an interesting distraction. When I saw Cory Booker, hot off his 24-hour extravaganza of verbiosity, get up and stand in front of a bunch of millionaires, literally, and not really be able to say the truth. He didn't lie, but he didn't confront the problem head on. And I think that's just emblematic of what we're seeing in Congress in general. Congress is not stepping up. They don't know how to step up. They don't really understand what the problem is because it's so different from anything they grew up with, and they're afraid to actually outline it. So
here's the thing is, the people that do understand it, David Hogue, 25 years old, he understands it.
The young ones, because they haven't spent a lifetime doing it the other way. They don't have a paradigm to shift from. They're learning as they go, and what they're learning is that we are in constitutional danger, constitutional free fall, as I've said, and they're not afraid to acknowledge it.
Well, one of the things I think that also he's doing is now that I think back, is that both the media and especially the Democrats have grossly mischaracterized and underestimated who the average person is in society and what they want. Especially this last election, because I look at it and you see the crowds for Kamala versus the people that barely showed up for Trump, and yet you have 77 million people that voted for him. It's like it was just everybody was surprised. Why are they doing this?
Yeah.
It's all very unusual. And I mean, when we think about JD Vance, first of all, like one of the things that concerns me as a young person is how young JD Vance is. So it's like, even if we get rid of Trump, even if we get rid of a lot of the people around Trump, he is still going to just be a threat lurking in the background. And that's one of the reasons, like, I have personally went out of my way to ridicule him so much and, really, just like push this idea that he has to be a very unattractive person to be associated with. Like, he has to be political poison to be associated with. Otherwise, we are going to be under this specter, for it could be another 60 years. I mean, they all do that stuff where, to make themselves live forever. I mean,
well, JD Vance is so bad that after the Pope met with him yesterday, he killed himself.
I think he was holding on to be able to snub him. Like, I think he probably
I realize I'm going to hell for that, by the way. So
no, I don't think so. I think.
Well, I don't believe in a hell, so there we go.
There you go. And this was the woke Pope. He wasn't as woke as some people would have liked him to be, but as far as popes go, he was pretty good. And
I actually wrote something very nice about him on my page today. So.
Yeah, and I'm an atheist too, so I get it. But I'm Catholic by association, so
Well, I think the Pope and Obama were both in the same situation. They both wanted to push further than they, were going to be able to do so. I mean, you take the Catholic Church, that's a conservative institution that has been, cemented in concrete for literally 2,000 years. It's like you're not going to just up and suddenly, start singing Kumbaya. But
I honestly think he did what he could do given the circumstances. And something that was noted today in one of the commentaries on the morning news was that in the selection that we're about to go through, and by the way, if you haven't seen the conclave, maybe now's a good time. In the selection we're about to go through, 80% of the cardinals who will be selecting the next pope were put in place by Saint Francis or Pope Francis. So if there's a way to carry forward, then there is at least optimism that it will be done. We'll see.
Yeah, it's like when you look at the demographics of it, you've got all these different areas of the world that have never been represented by a cardinal before. It's not going to be Eurocentric like it has been until the last 30 years. So
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what they come up with, but I do at least have some optimism that they will continue forward on a liberal path. Here's what struck me sometime over the weekend, or as I've been contemplating the Pope's imminent demise, because we could all see it coming, right? I mean, it was going to happen sooner or later. There's no mystery as to why so many of the right-wing authoritarian dictatorships in the world are based in Catholicism.
Oh yeah.
And borrow from it heavily. It just is. Whether it's Vichy France, which nobody remembers or thinks about, but that was an authoritarian dictatorship in place by the Nazis. Francisco Franco, Perón's Argentina, Milei's Argentina. Any number of, even Hitler was a lapsed Catholic, and Himmler had such an admiration for the church that he designed his SS based on its structure.
Well, here's the thing is with the Catholic Church, you don't, it's like I grew up in the Protestant faith. I'm not in those faiths anymore, so no faith. But you have a personal relationship with God. You don't need anybody between you and God to speak for. And the Catholic Church,
as a Protestant, as a Protestant,
yeah.
In the Catholic Church, you need to go through some saints and a priest and a pope and Mother Mary. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think that these people like Peter Thiel and JD Vance, they like Catholicism because they like that hierarchy. They know that it's something that if they latch on to that hierarchy, it has all of this built-in clout, built-in prowess. I thought it was interesting a couple of years ago that Jordan Peterson came out as a cultural Catholic. He's like, well, I'm an atheist, but I'm a cultural Catholic because Western civilization and blah, blah, blah. And, I don't know. I think it's kind of cynical, this JD Vance version of Catholicism. And I agree with you that it seems to be cynical. Kind of this, shortcut to dictatorship and power, and sort of the aesthetics of the dictatorship as well. It's got that vibe.
One person in charge, unquestioning faith, all of those things. It rolls right in with authoritarianism. And listen, I'm not. There's a lot of church bashing going on, and there's a lot of church bashing that is deserved. But at the same time, it's a reality, and there's a lot of people that feel very deeply about it. A lot of my family feels very deeply about it. So I'm not going to sit here and say all Catholics everywhere are bad or authoritarian. Clearly, they're not. The recent Pope being an example of that. But it could go either way. We just don't know, and it would be a tragedy if the Pope's successor was somebody who supported authoritarianism, as so many popes in the past have done.
Yeah, or like an Opus Dei type, like Pete Hegseth's situation over there. And I mean, honestly, the cynic in me was thinking to myself, like, I wonder, was JD Vance over at the Vatican doing wheeling and dealing on Easter? Because, we've all been looking at the Pope thinking he's seeming kind of frail.
Well, I'm sure that was his intention, but it's like, the Pope didn't personally show up. And now it looks like it was because he physically couldn't do
No, they had a few minutes together. Literally from what's been reported, it was simply to say Happy Easter, and off they went. But they did actually meet face to face. Yes. Some
outlets are reporting it as a snub, and that's the story that I like to go with. That the Pope's last official act was snubbing JD Vance. I like that.
Which counts as his first miracle to sainthood.
You know what? I love it. Let's run with that narrative. We will build the Catholic coalition. We got it.
I'm perfect. If that's what does it, I'm perfectly happy with singing that praise. Go for it. Hallelujah. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Well, it's like on a similar note, there's a show right now on HBO called Dark Money. And if you've got access to HBO, you need to see this, especially the season 1, second episode, which goes into great depth about how the Republicans literally they melded together with the evangelical Christo-fascist nation movement until they took it over. And there's this guy named Leonard Leo that came up with all the philosophical and intellectual underpinnings for this. And, it's basically a 50-year plan that's just now coming to fruition.
That's absolutely right. And, it's really disheartening to me personally that I can look back on parts and pieces of my life when I was either tangentially involved with that or supported it or thought it was cool until I finally grew up and out of that sort of nonsense. But I know a ton of people that have never grown out of that nonsense and are very attracted to it. Some of it for religious reasons, and some of it just simply because that it's given that this movement has given them license to be the assholes they have always wanted to be.
Yeah. That's what's been kind of rough, I feel, about the last few months in particular, is people are really showing themselves, and some of it's not pretty.
Yep. Well, we're going to see where it goes. I've been very heartened by the 50501 movement and the numbers of people that keep showing up at these events. There's going to be another one on the 30th, I think. There's going to be a Veterans March in Washington on the Mall that I will absolutely be at. It seems like every other weekend there's going to be something happening in multiple places around the country. And the fact that we're seeing these happening in traditionally red areas, people are coming out and saying enough is enough.
Yeah. Also,
go ahead.
The general strike as well. There's a website up right now for a general strike. And I think once they get 6 million strike cards, they're going to call a general strike and essentially, quote unquote, shut the country down. And I mean, that might be the degree of what needs to happen to start getting somebody to put the brakes on this thing, do a hard pause.
I saw a very interesting little headline pop up today, comment that, I know it was from the Bulwark, the right wing, the former right wing people that are now, anti-Trump. The Bulwark saying something about when his support reaches 33%, they really expect congressional members and senators to jump ship because at that point their own reelection is at risk.
Well, that's James Carville's strategy.
Yeah, well, he's not part of Bulwark, but it does seem like a reasonable number. Once you reach that low, once you're below 40%, you're not going to get elected. It's just not going to happen. And so, regardless of who doesn't show up anymore, so we'll see. We'll see.
I've been doing more reading here lately, and one of the things that I came across was if you look at revolutions, all you need is 3.55% of the population, which is, I guess, where the 3%ers come from.
That is exactly where the 3%ers come from.
Once you get that, you will be, your political movement is going to do something.
Yeah, just remember that's 3% of people who are going to actively take up arms. That's not 3% of people who are going to vote another way. That's 3% of people who are going to pick up a rifle, make bombs, and destroy things.
No, the 3.5 I think is peaceful. Like it's 3.5% of the population engaged in. If we're talking about Chenoweth, I can't think of her first name, but Dr. Chenoweth, or whoever wrote this particular paper, I think it's 3.5% engaged in peaceful protest.
I'm not sure that's it, but okay. Let's just. I mean,
a little research.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Because once you start breaking things and killing people and shooting stuff, things get ugly. Both sides, people are going to die.
And that's what Noam Chomsky said too. He said that the left always has to remember that violence should not be their go-to because we are not as willing to commit violence as people on the right are. And, without that resolve, you're not going to win in a violent encounter. So, the smartest thing to do is to be as nonviolent as possible for as long as
that's
possible.
Dustin Hoffman, Reservoir Dogs. You get pushed far enough, you go crazy.
That's just it. At some point, I mean, the way that terrorism works, the way that insurgencies work is when people feel they don't have a political option, when there's nothing else they can do, they pick up guns, and that's when things get. No, I'm not advocating that. I do not.
I'm just saying, it's like, fortunately, we're nowhere near that. Thank God. So
I don't know that we're not near that. I'm sorry, Christine. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I think, I was going to say maybe something similar, is that I do worry about other kind of maybe smaller violent things happening. You know what I mean? Like if there could be like workplace violence, or things at protests, or just kind of like more maybe not people getting organized and like, creating militias, but like just people being deprived and on edge, and more violence breaking out.
I'll give you the perfect example of that, and that's Luigi Mangione.
Yes.
Luigi Mangione is the precursor of exactly this type of activity.
He is.
Luigi Mangione is what happens when people feel like they have no other options. And whether you agree or not, strictly from a legal standpoint, charging him for terrorism is legally correct, because what he did was a violent action to change economic or political things. And as he said so, as he's admitted, that was the whole point.
His lawyers are saying that,
of course,
they're calling it a manifesto. It was just a journal, like they're doing their legalese.
They're doing what they have to do, and that's what lawyers do. But let's be realistic. Luigi Mangione, the only reason he killed that guy and selected him as a target was to create awareness, which he has done. He accomplished his goal. Look at the number of people that support him. Good or, right or wrong, there are a lot of people support, including some of my children, who disagree with me that he should be charged as a terrorist. But yeah, well.
It's called the propaganda of the deed.
Yeah, there you go.
That's something happened in Nashville, which actually is very heartening. And over the weekend, ICE was following, and this happened in Nashville of all places. ICE was following this white truck that had picked up some people, I think, from a church sanctuary or something like that, took them either to the doctor or legal appointment, and they tried to stop the truck on the street. The driver didn't stop, but went back to, the home or the place, whatever. All the neighbors came out and surrounded the truck, nonviolently, just linked arms to keep ICE from getting to the truck. And they stayed like that, for like 45 minutes, an hour, until finally ICE just gave up and left. So, seeing that in Nashville really, gives me hope that, this is not a lost cause.
Well, let's be realistic. Nashville is the little blue dot in the middle of a red state.
I've been to Nashville. It's there's plenty of red there too. So.
Well, yeah, but nonetheless, if you're going to have any kind of liberal reaction, it's going to be in Nashville and not Knoxville or Chattanooga.
No, Knoxville's college town. So that's the other little blue dot.
Even if you're somebody
not to go to Sevierville, that's red.
All right, Christine, now go.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think there's like a little bit of a lag, so I didn't know. But I'm thinking to myself, it's because they're pushing the limits. So like, even if Nashville is kind of, is blue, but is, in the middle of an ocean of red, so they're going to be kind of conservative leaning, they're really violating when they're going after people in the church van. In Los Angeles, they were going after the school nurse in the middle of school, and they were going to go in the building in the school day and extract her out. And the teachers and the students and everybody surrounded her as well and would not let them in. And because it's too far. It's way too far. People wanted dangerous people taken off the streets because they were scared. They didn't want people coming after the school nurse and people at church. And I mean, really, it's so distasteful. And
that's one of the things that we need to keep using as a tactic. It's called a dilemma. And it's what you use in autocracies is you create something where it's a lose-lose situation for that guy. So either they walk away and show that they're powerless, because the thing is, if they had a judicial warrant, they would have just pulled it out, judicial warrant, Get out of the way. We're taking these people out of the van. They didn't have that. And so they lose. If they try to, crack heads and pull them out, then there's going to be about 50 video cameras taking that down. It's going to go up on the web, and you're going to lose because it's going to be, dystopian third world violence, and you're going to lose.
That's exactly what needs to happen. I mean,
Yes.
what Christine talked about with surrounding the van, what Christine talked about with the students and the teachers, blocking ICE from going after the school nurse. It's individual actions like that around the country that are gonna bring this thing to a head. And when they realize that the people are not with them, because right now they don't believe it. It doesn't matter what the polls say. They think they've got a massive, mandate to make these things happen. And as a result, they're making a huge number of mistakes, like going after the school nurse or going after the church van. And it's pissing people off. People who either may have supported them in the past, or people who just didn't care, didn't think that they, their vote would make a difference, are now getting energized and saying enough is enough. And this is what gives me hope when I see the 50501 people showing up.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's but there's still a lot of people who are unaware. I had an interaction with a family member over the weekend who I was talking about the person in Florida who was a U.S. citizen that came from Georgia to Tallahassee for work, and they got pulled over, and he had his birth certificate and everything. His mom brought his birth certificate down, and they still detained him for 48 hours on an ICE hold. And the person who I was speaking to did not believe it. They're like, oh, there must have been a mitigating circumstance. They must have been in the car with other illegals, and they're not following the train of thought. Like, for them to be doing this, they're literally sitting on the side of the road looking for Spanish people driving in cars to pull over to check their papers. I mean, this is ludicrous.
Or as we used to say back in the 80s, profiling.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's profiling.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's too much, and it's too much to keep track of, because it's like we have these 1,000 human rights violations, due process violations. We've got national security crisis after crisis after crisis, the tariffs, DOJ, the DOJ whistleblower situation. I mean, it's like literally every single area of safety and security is under attack at all times, either by incompetence or just like ruthless malice and greed. And, I feel like I wish somebody would kind of like organize this so that way I could have like a neat accounting each day. Like, okay, well, I see the ACLU is dealing with the thing with the immigration, the due process. That's good. Are they doing shadow hearings in Congress for, what's going on with the national security situation? Like, it would just be really nice if we had like a JIRA board or something to kind of organize all of this madness.
And that certainly hasn't showed up yet. But, I want to answer Sean Brooker here asking about the warrants for these people. According to Tom Homan, the head of ICE, the head of these extraction operations, since Trump has invoked the Alien and Sedition Act, they don't need a warrant. He says that takes it out. There's no due process involved when you invoke this thing that I think was written in 1798 or whenever the hell it was. So but that just gives you an idea where their mindset is. They can do whatever they want if they declare these people, as being seditious or aliens. And oh, by the way, that leads directly to any one of us sitting right here or listening to being extracted and sent away to some place like, I don't know, El Salvador or Russia. What would keep them from doing that? Or saying, oh, well, we thought he was a bad guy, we sent him there, and now he's in somebody else's prison and we can't get him out.
Well, I think that what you're going to have happen is that, what I understand, there has been a couple of American citizens that have, just real guys born here, not naturalized, that have gotten swept up in this, but they were all brown. So the
Yeah.
first time you have, a white guy that happens to, I think then you get the shit hitting the fan.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
think about what you just said. Oh, it's okay. I'm not saying you said it's okay, but it has to
Yeah,
rise to the
think it's
level of a white Anglo-Saxon being thrown out of the country before the rest of the population gets angry about it. You know what? I don't accept that. I don't. I mean, anybody. The guy that's in C-Cut right now, he was a green card holder. He was a legal resident. He has constitutional protections, and if we're going to extend constitutional protections to people with his status, then it's one size fits all, and that's just the way that it is. I don't care where he came from. I don't care what the accusations against him are until they're proven in a court of law and he's convicted of something. He's still a legal resident.
Well, that's actually, to extend your thought, Harry, that's the danger is that you've heard nothing from the Trump regime except that he's a member of MS-13. He's a terrorist, coming out with all these horrible charges with zero proof.
Yeah, even though that's been under legal review, the multiple judges have said no. The Supreme Court said no. So, I mean, for people who have actually seen the evidence and judged it and weighed it, no, he's not. But again, what keeps them from doing that to one of us? What keeps them from doing that to one of us native-born white Anglo-Saxon folks that, generations on the ground as Americans and just disappearing us? Because that's what happens in authoritarian dictatorships. And really, truly, that is where we're headed if things don't stop.
Well, I mean, Pam Bondi has already directly told Jasmine Crockett, you better keep your mouth shut or we're going to send you to prison. Tom Homan has said basically the same thing. Sebastian Gorka is saying, if you say anything against Trump, we're going to send you off to CCOT. And that's whether you're an American citizen or not. It's like, seriously?
I have to, this reminds me of something in history, but one of the ways that the Quakers were able to start convincing people that abolition was a worthwhile cause was by showing them pictures of enslaved children who appeared to be white, but were deemed to be black due to one drop rules. And that terrified the shit out of people because they realized if you let these psychos be in charge, these sociopaths, then they will, once they get power over anybody, they can easily take power over you. Yeah. And they have no scruples. And while I think that, it shouldn't have to come to that, I think that this first step of finding these stories where maybe the people don't necessarily look like the quote unquote majority population, but their stories are relatable. Like, this guy's a gay hairdresser. That guy has an autism tattoo because he has a younger brother with autism. This guy, he's got disabled children and he's a union member. And it's like, even if it's not about how somebody appears, it's, about what's that, part of you that you can see in the other person and like find that empathy. And I think that's very effective. Another thing that I thought was interestingly effective that Senator Van Hollen did is one of the ways he twisted Bukele's arm to get to see Mr. Abrego Garcia was to tell him that he'd be breaking international law when it comes to allowing prisoners to have contact with their lawyers. Yeah. So I think there's, kind of from an international perspective, I think eyebrows are definitely being raised. And there are people suggesting that we need to start, putting in complaints with Amnesty International, letting them know we have concerns about human rights violations in our government, because maybe we can't send people down there to El Salvador to go extract these people, but the international community can certainly help us put financial pressure on El Salvador. There's lots of different ways to persuade.
It's interesting you say that, and this is gonna perk up Ed's ears. I think we talked briefly about it, but the numbers are now in, and because of the first quarter tourism numbers, we now know that tourism in the United States has dropped off about 10% from where it was a year ago. Yeah, your dogs are going crazy, Doc. Yeah, you got to do something about those guys. 10% drop in tourism. And a lot of people say, well, I don't need those people anyway. They don't understand tourism. When people come here and they spend tens of thousands of dollars on a family vacation, that's free money coming in from somewhere else. That's money that was made in the UK or Germany or wherever else that people are coming here and spending and pumping into our economy. That's an import of money. That is pure
$60 billion a year.
Yeah. And to get a drop of 10% in just 3 months, what's it going to look like over summer vacation when basically all of Europe takes 5 weeks off to go do something? They're not going to be coming here.
Not good.
And it's not just Canada. It's not just Mexico. It's other places with a lot of money to spend that they're not doing it here.
And
By the way, the other thing to note is the dollar is now lower than it's been in 3 years in international trade, which would be great if we exported things, but we are a net importer. And that means that all the stuff that we still have to buy will not only have a tariff, but it's got to be more expensive because our dollar doesn't buy as much of it. So great job. Well done. How about that Trump economy?
It's a disaster. I actually just found out that Tampa has we've had like the highest increase in grocery prices this year because we're kind of it's difficult to get trucks down here lately because of a certain immigration law.
Well,
so,
it sucks being you, Christine. I'm sorry.
it does, but you know what? I'm down here rabble rousing, trying to wake people up because I can't think of the guy's name from the Lincoln Project, but he said one of the things he's doing penance for is helping make Florida one of the most corrupt states. So, we've got some work to do.
When it comes to corruption, there's a lot of states out there giving Florida a run for its money.
when I was running for the legislature in Arizona in 2016, Harvard School of Ethics had just put out a report calling Arizona the most corrupt state in America, and it's not because of people breaking laws. It was because the legislature writing laws that were so completely unethical they didn't need to break laws. It was just corrupt from the get-go. And since then, we've now seen North Carolina, we've now seen Wisconsin, we've now seen Florida, all these states where they have, created a supermajority through gerrymandering have followed suit. And you don't have to break a law to be corrupt in those places. So yeah, you might well be living in the most corrupt state in the union. When he had a political future, I thought that your governor DeSantis was probably the most dangerous man in America, more dangerous than Trump, because he was smarter than Trump. But yeah, then he decided to pick a fight with Disney and do stupid things and turn it into something that it wasn't. And now everybody thinks he's an idiot. So we'll see. He might have a future yet. But nonetheless, he still created a terrible, terrible political environment in that state. And it's my home state. I was born and raised there.
No,
it's so bad.
Was that photo of him wearing the white dairy boots. That was his Michael Dukakis moment.
Yeah, I think so.
He's got a whole scheme in place to try to get his wife to be governor for the next 4 years. So then, but they just got scandalized because, they took a bunch of money from their charity or whatever. But speaking of Florida, do you know whose brother is up for election for the president of the DC bar?
Please tell me it's Gates's brother.
Pam Bondi's brother.
Oh, Pam Bondi's brother.
Pam Bondi's brother.
All in the family.
Florida is the gift that keeps on giving to our
Did you say country. The DC bar or the Florida bar?
DC bar, unfortunately.
DC bar. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
DC bar. Then there will be, and that's not good because we need the DC bar to be able to, hold lawyers accountable when they act up over the next couple of years, inevitably. So, there's a lot of people coming out against that though, too, but it's, we have a lot of work to do. Mark Elias just recently came out and said, part of this whole, battle is going to be a battle behind the scenes, working state by state to kind of fix some of this rigging that's going on. And they've got to do it in fast action. So,
well, that brings up the point. I think the real fight now is inside the Democratic Party. And I think that when you look at the David Hogue versus James Carville. I think that is the fight. That's
it.
the dividing line right now. And
you're right, because the Democrats, at the party of the Democrats, I'm not going to talk about the individual Democrats that are out there, because I'm one of them. But the Democratic Party and the leadership has become so stultified and stuck in their own. Now, they've been drinking their own bathwater for so long, they do not know what to do. They're part of the problem now. They won't get out of the way. And you're right. There needs to be a complete changeover. And until there is, they're not going to win.
No, they're not. And, big tech is also, it's such a problem in the Democratic Party as well. Like, so for example, Cory Booker, I have ambivalent feelings about his filibuster thing. I think it was good. The timing was good, but also, a little performative. So I was like, you get like 7 out of 10 for the filibuster, right?
Yeah.
The next day I see an article come out. Cory Booker released the information from his Aura Ring from his 25-hour filibuster. Aura Ring is a ring that you wear that supposedly gives you all this biometric data about yourself.
Yeah.
And it's, the people who created the Aura Ring are, deeply embedded in Silicon Valley. One of the guys, Peter Attia, is like the Silicon Valley doctor for all of these, freaks in Silicon Valley that want to live forever. And, what they do is they manufacture papers to support their products, then pay to have them put in scientific journals. And they build this whole feedback, system of all of these journal articles that support that their products work, but they're really written by people that work for them. And it's like completely like messed up that whole system.
But then it's funny you mentioned that, because hedge funds are on a tear buying scientific journals.
Yes.
Just for that reason, so that they can have editorial control over what gets published and what doesn't. And to me, that is, if I'm having my cancer medicine, reviewed, I want it to be because it either works or it doesn't work. Not because some guy's going to make a $50 million bonus because they put me on it. Oh, didn't work. Oh, sorry.
No, and that's why it's so frightening. But the thing is there's all of this like techno optimism. Like, if we just have the data, we can do anything with it. And they can, but do I think that Cory Booker got paid by Aura Ring to do that? No, of course not. But do I think that, Aura Ring is going to make sure that Cory Booker gets a nice donation in a couple of years? Like, do I think one hand washes the other? Sure. And I think for a lot of younger people, they've been being told the Democrats and the Republicans aren't that different. They're both in bed with big tech. They're both in, even though they are different in a lot of ways, we're seeing that right now. I think that because, the Democrats are so tied to the moneyed interests as well, it's like, and it's too much of an outsized influence. It's like, so I think that they're going to have to focus a lot less on cozying up to business. I mean, you can't completely abandon it. I get that. I live in the real world, but it's like, younger people who are politically active are very sensitive to the idea of people being bought. Yeah. And stuff like that demonstrates, like, can we really trust Cory Booker? Like, or should we be cynical about this and a doomer and nothing matters?
Well, that's why in the next elections, I'm of the opinion that I don't care what your provenance is, how long you've been there. It's open season. It's a free for all. May the best person win. It's like, this stuff. I mean, it's like right now, Rahul Grijalva, who has been, been there like 30 something years, 16 elections, just died, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
I was going to say he's dead now. So,
well, the thing
that's a self-correcting problem.
There's this big fight because his daughter, Adelaide, has basically staked the claim that this is basically a hereditary seat.
Oh, come on.
No, I'll tell you, as a former Tucsonan, as somebody who knows all the people you're just talking about, has met them and been in the same room with them, that's 100% true. I mean, Grijalva had a job for life, just simply because his district had a machine, and the machine was all about Grijalva. And when she was the mayor of South Tucson, no, that was another political daughter. My bad. When It's just South Tucson. It just is, and it's the worst of the Democratic Party, and the way they do things. I'm not saying Grijalva was a bad guy, but I am saying that he was kept in office by very sketchy means, and his daughter will get that office because of very sketchy means, and that's just the way that it's going to be down there until things change. And maybe they won't ever in that particular location.
Yeah. See, that's a problem.
Get those things changed. The progressives and Democrats, people on the left, need to come up with a Project 2029.
Well, so really and truly, what makes all that possible, and what makes this such an entrenched problem, is the way we finance elections. And until we have that sorted out, until we basically go to a public financing system and a shorter campaign, elections in Canada, national elections, are only 5 weeks by law. You can't campaign until 5 weeks before the election. There's a start date and an end date. And the financing is much more restricted. I'm not sure how the financing actually works in Canada, but it's not nearly as wide open as we have here. And we've just turned the whole thing into a purchase office system.
Wow, that's Citizens United. Thank you, Supreme Court.
Oh, Citizens United was the cherry on top of that shit cake.
And what do we do about them? I mean, honestly,
you have to have an overwhelming victory to get anything done, because as long as you've got this divided close to 50-50, it's not going to change.
I was having a conversation with some guy on Facebook yesterday, who was complaining about how a Mack truck, don't get me on the numbers, but basically he owns his own dump truck business. And he was complaining how in 1998 or in the 1990s, a dump truck cost him $115,000. And now that same dump truck costs him $230,000. And I did the math, went on the website, checked it out, did the inflation. And if you count for inflation, it's the same exact damn price. And when I brought that up to him and showed him the link, he said, well, yeah, but wages haven't kept pace with that. And my response was, well, who the hell do you think caused that to happen? And, Republicans, we haven't changed the minimum wage since like 1998 or something ridiculous.
Oh, it's been, yeah.
Yeah, and it's let's just say it's $7.50 right now. And about half the states have kept it at that level. You can't live on $7.50. I don't care who you are. You can live in a shack by the side of the road, and you can't live on $7.50 an hour. But Republicans refused to change it. Democrats, for the most part, have been very lukewarm about changing it. And the reality is, whenever it's been brought up in a public referendum, as it was in Arizona in 2016, it wins overwhelmingly, even in red states. A lot of states don't have public referenda. You can't change it by changing the Constitution. But in states where it has happened and where it has gone up, it's much different and much better. And oh, by the way, where are those? Who's in charge in those states for the most part? They are becoming decidedly purple, if not outright blue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because you can't live on that amount of money, and I think that the Democrats are scared to piss off small business owners, because and also the restaurant industry. They are another group that has really fought against the
every
minimum
time
wage.
I go to Europe, where they pay their wait staff and cooks, well, my bills aren't much different than what I charge my own patrons at my own restaurant.
Yep.
Study after study has shown, and because we now have history on this, the minimum wage does not cause inflation. The minimum wage does not, put people out of business that aren't already on the edge of bankruptcy anyway. The minimum wage creates a spending class. We are a consumer society. 70% of our economy is based on people buying shit.
Yep.
And if they have money, they can buy more shit. And if they don't have the money in their pocket, they can't buy it. So trying to keep your wait staff, your bartender, whatever, poor, doesn't do anything for you. It just makes you just as poor in the long run.
The whole thing is, that's one thing Henry Ford did that, was good. He decided, I need to pay my guys enough they can afford to buy my car.
Yeah. With a few things he did,
business.
because otherwise he was a complete asshole. But yes, he did do that.
A little, yeah.
That's a subject for another day. He was the Elon Musk of his day.
In a lot of ways, yeah. In a lot of ways, he was. Yeah.
And then Edison before that.
Yeah. Oh, Edison. My God.
I don't want to be a killjoy, but it is now 2 minutes or 3 minutes before 7, or excuse me, 8 my time, and I'm getting hungry. Two out of 3 people on this cast are on the East Coast time there, Ed. So
I've been up since 7 o'clock your time, 4 o'clock my time. I'm exhausted, so it's like I think it's okay to call it. So
all right, well, listen, it's just for my part, and then I'm going to shut up. Yeah, we're still in free fall. We see signs of life in the population, and I think that this is the population in general are the ones who are going to change this, because it ain't SCOTUS. It sure as shit ain't Congress. It ain't nobody in the government as we see it. And unless some strange ass thing happens and there's a military coup, which I do absolutely not expect is going to happen, we're stuck with this shit until the population does stand up and say enough is enough.
So in other words, we've got a flat tire we're going to be driving around on for the next 4 years.
Not even a donut.
Yeah,
well, guys,
the wheels have fallen off.
Good show. Thank you. And for all the people that stuck with us, I thank you very much. We really appreciate you staying here with us. So, and till next week, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of crap happen between now and then to talk about. So we'll see you then.
Take care. Bye.